Shabbat Shalom. My name is Noel Joshua Hadley. Of course, this is the Unexpected Cosmology. I hope you are wearing your seatbelts tonight. I hope you're buckling up because it's going to be quite the study. Now, the last couple of weeks, last week I had the tech issue. Hopefully, I'm not going to have that tonight. Going through the Torah portions, it's a sink or swim affair. I mean, every single week, it's like I got to come up with a got to dig into the Torah, come up with, read it and come up with a bunch of notes. And, you get through the week and you're like, oh, I did it. And then you got a couple days to come up for air and then it's go time again. And the last couple of weeks have been on leprosy. So 2 weeks ago, I'm reading the whole portion on leprosy. And I'm like, how in the world am I going to fill a 2-hour slot study on leprosy? And I got through it. I'm like, sweet, I did it. And then I read the next week's portion. It's leprosy again. And now that was, I got through that too. That was last week. This week, it's pretty sweet. We're looking at Azazel, the Azazel goat tonight. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. And hold on a second. A little coffee. I'm pretty wired right now on coffee. I'm not sleeping tonight. Sorry, honey. I know you're listening in the other room. I'll probably be up to like 2 or 3 in the morning doing jumping jacks from all the coffee I've drunk. Because, this is the end of the week. And I had a really good couple of weeks, got a lot done. I mean, very productive week. And I feel like I just got off a roller coaster, and I got to go press the live button. And I feel like, oh man, I haven't even caught my breath yet. But this was a good roller coaster, not the modern ones. This is like, the old days, the rickety wood ones with like, you're looking down and all the boards are coming loose and the screws are popping out and you got to see a chiropractor afterwards. So before we get into tonight's Leviticus portion, let me just show you a couple of things. Now, my website's coming along. For anyone new here, I don't need to go through all the details again. We lost the old website, had to build it again. It's been a painful process. Unlike NASA, who it's too painful to build up the process to go back to the moon again, I was able to build up a new website. I was able to do it. It's not as painful as NASA makes out. But anyways, yeah, here's the new, we're going, vintage 1990s website here, adding a lot of pictures. And something I did this week, I've been so encouraged. I'm about $150 short of my goal for, what month are we in? April. $150 short. Not bad. I'm very, very happy with everybody just giving to this ministry very graciously. And so as a result, what I've done is on the website, let me see if I can move my picture so you guys can actually see. Okay. I'm going to shrink myself down really quickly. And I want to show you. So if you go to my website, up here, article archives, this is now free for everybody. I was making this a Patreon only subscribers. Like if you get $5 a month, you get access here. But because people have been giving so generously, so much and sacrificing, I didn't want their sacrifices to go to waste. I want this to open up to everybody. So now you can go in here. You can look at my article updates room. And this is like my diary where I take you through every single time I update a paper. It's got the date there. You can see if it's new, it's in red. If it's an update, it's just black. But describe, what I change in each paper, what's new. You can look here. This is my archives room. And every single one of these is a different paper I've written. Some of these are hundreds of pages. Some of them are 20, 30 pages long. But you can just go down this list and there are dozens and dozens and dozens. The list just keeps going on and on and on. I keep adding new ones all the time. I added about maybe 10 in the last week. I'm just so far behind in getting my PDFs up on here, my old papers, and I keep adding new ones every week. So come by, check them out, and just have fun reading them. And then over here, Sacred Scripture. This is another one that's now free for everybody. Come to my website. And we have here just link after link after link. These are all extra biblical books. There's probably some in here you've never heard of before. Let me just pick one out. Well, Sibylline Oracles is on here. That's fun. The Story Perpetua. Let's see. The Passion of St. Christopher. Let's see. The Pearls on here. Let's see. What else? There's the Letter of Lentulus. Discourse on Napoleon. Oh, the Code of Hammurabi is on here. So just a lot of stuff to check out. In case you haven't before, you'll probably find something new. Come on by. Also, just want to invite everybody, before again I get into this, want to invite everybody to come to my Discord site. Check us out. It was a great community. We just had a great 2-hour conversation before I went live. We started at 7 p.m. Eastern time. We do that every week. It's just a meet and greet community, little chit chat. We had a lot of fun. All right. And that's a time you can come ask me. I make that time every week for people to come ask me questions, because people ask me questions all throughout the week and I can't get to them all. Come by, say hello. I'd love to meet you. All right. We are on week, if I'm counting correctly, week 29 of the Torah portions, Leviticus chapter 16 through 18. Now, I'm not sure what all the other groups are doing. I am told on the rumor mill that I am like a week or something behind other groups. And I noticed this week that since the mainstream groups are keeping Passover, now I kept Passover 3 weeks ago now on a little bit of different calendar. It might have been a month ago now. I don't even remember. Anyways, I asked my fellow admins and my elders, I was like, should I just take this week off? Because it seems like the mainstream groups are. And I posted this meme afterward of the dog of me taking a week off from Torah portions, saying this is fine. And this is how it feels like, just, because, you fall behind in Torah portions, like you fall like 4 or 5 chapters behind. That's a lot to catch up on. It starts tacking up quickly. But here we are. So let's go over last week's review, what I discussed, leprosy. Over the last 2 weeks, to talk about spiritual leprosy defined. And now one of the things I want to do in all these Torah portions is not only to show how the entire Bible from beginning to end is like a clock with all the cogwheels in there. You can't just, if you take out the Torah, all the rest of the Bible stops functioning. It just it just breaks. However much people try to convince themselves otherwise, you have to have the Torah, the Tanakh, the epistles, the prophets, Revelation, it all, and of course you have the extra synchronized books as well, the extra biblical books that all fit in there as well. But what I want to show that, but then I also want to show that the many Christians, they come to me and they go, I don't need to keep the Torah. That's the written, that's the letter of the law. I don't have to keep that. I just have to keep the spirit of the law. And it's like, well, actually, if you're keeping the spirit of the law is like hyper hardcore righteousness. Like if you're truly keeping the spirit of the law, believe me, you're keeping the letter of the law. Like they go hand in hand. You can keep the letter of the law and not have the spirit of the law, but if you have the spirit, you're keeping the letter, believe me. So I want to take, I describe spiritual leprosy and show that righteous sorrow produces repentance leading to salvation. That's what we want to have. We want to have a sorrow that leads to our repentance. We want to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. But the sorrow of the world produces death. The sorrow of the world is one in which you are not led to repentance for your transgressions of the Torah. Spiritual leprosy is having one's own conscience seared with a hot iron, thereby being sorrowful but not repentant. All right. So we could all think of those individuals who their conscience is so seared that they're not even interested in repenting anymore. That's spiritual leprosy. I showed the example of the rich man and Eliezer, or you would know him as Lazarus, the rich man and Lazarus, and how the rich man was eternally in Sheol. His condition was manifested that he had spiritual leprosy. Really interesting. He actually wasn't repentant at all. And people read that parable all the time and go like, oh, he's sorry. He actually wasn't sorry. He actually wasn't. He never put it together. He was never able to figure out why Eliezer or Lazarus got to go to paradise, or in this case, Abraham's bosom on the other side of Sheol, and he didn't. He thought that the servant needed to come and feed him. He didn't figure it out. I showed you that false witness and division or discord among brothers is a symptom of spiritual leprosy. So think about that when we are tempted to go to other ministries. I'm not even talking about my own. I mean, I don't even want to go to other ministries and cause division or discord. And unfortunately, I'm such a controversial person. Just by showing up, I could be a problem in those cases. That's one of the reasons I kind of keep my distances unless if I'm invited. But false witness is the other one, slander, gossip, those things. Those are all signs. So when you're watching people giving false witness and gossip and slander online, you need to go like, ooh, that person needs to be saying unclean, unclean, unclean. Like, keep away from those people. They are spiritual lepers, unclean people. We saw in Matthew 15, Yahushua said that being clean is from within as well as being unclean. It starts from within and proceeds through the mouth. I showed you the Torah portion, specifically how priests were to go to the outer encampment to treat leprosy. Really interesting. They were to leave the camp. They were to meet the lepers on the edge in the scene of the outer darkness. They have been removed from the presence of the camp. They're in the outer darkness. And I showed you how Adam and Eve, or Chah-Waha, were thrown from paradise, and how Yahusha are, as a scene of them being thrown out because of their spiritual leprous condition, and how Yahusha, our high priest, he left the camp to visit the sick, not the healthy. Just like the priest in Leviticus, he left paradise, he left heaven, he left the hidden waters, wherever he came from the kingdom of heaven. He came here to tend to the sick and make them well. Great picture of what the high priests were supposed to do. I showed you these 7 days of cleansing from spiritual leprosy was intended for repentance. I mean, you've got a priest comes and checks you out and go, we think you have leprosy. We're not sure. We're going to come back in 7 days. Think about like what needs to be going through your mind in those 7 days, where you need to be getting down on your knees and being like, Father, forgive me. What have I done? Show me my sin. I want to repent of this. That needs to be the attitude in those 7 days. We went over Leviticus chapter 14, which is a phenomenal chapter on the two birds, the living water, the warp and the wolf, the hyssop and the cistern. I'm not even going to go over that now. The first like 30 minutes of that video last week was all the bad internet. If you can just make it through that, the rest of it's pretty good. I showed you that Adam and Chah-Waha were created unclean. That was pretty crazy. And living unclean brings death, as in dying you shall die. This is what Yahweh had told them in the garden, that if they ate from this tree, dying you shall die. We went over the spilling of seed sexually. I showed you that actually, I don't know if I really did talk about this, but I was trying to get across the point that sex is like salt. Yes. Salt is alchemical in that it is a flavor. It actually encourages a sex drive. Studies seem to show a lack of salt brings down the sex drive, but too much salt is a poison. So salt. Salt is a way that you can you preserve meat, right? But too much salt, you actually destroy crops forever. Think of Sodom and Gomorrah. Right. So that's kind of the interesting thing about it. Well, the thing about sex is that it's clean and it's unclean. It is pure or adulterous. Really interesting, just opposites, where sex is pure, but it's also adulterous. There's just two, scale degrees on that. We went over the Sea of Souls and semen, how that deals with pre-existence. This was all part of the Torah portions, in case you're curious. And how that should tie in with the purpose of an orgasm, a male orgasm, that it should tie in with natural law, the idea of procreating children, knowing about the Sea of Souls, knowing about pre-existence, that kind of stuff, not wasting the image of our Creator. We talked about the marriage of Ruachoth. Also, interesting enough, about being unclean with the spillage of seed, and how we have guardian angels. I showed you the war scroll, from the Dead Sea Scrolls, where it says that you're not to go out to war if you have spilled your seed that day, because your guardian angel is going with you. And really interesting idea. We talked about Sabbath day according to Jubilees 2, the big question, the big controversial question, sex on the Sabbath. Moving on, you can go back to that video and see all that, but just review. All right, so what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to read through the complete Torah portion tonight, and without stopping for commentary, and then we'll just break into commentary from there. Laws for ministering priests. This is Leviticus chapter 16. And Yahuwah, the ever-living, set words in order toward Al-Mashahah, following the deaths of the two sons of Aaron when they approached the face of Yahweh. So it's kind of interesting. It's almost like backtracking because they died 3 weeks ago now, according to when they offered the strange fire. And then we went through like 2 weeks of leprosy and other things like that. So it's kind of interesting now that we're jumping back into this again, retracing our steps. And so died. And Yahuwah declared toward Al-Mashahah, set words in order toward Aaron, your brother, that he does not come at all times towards the Kudash, from the house of the veil, toward the face of the covering, which is upon the ark of the covenant, that he die not. For in the cloud mass, I will appear over the covering of redemption. I love that phrasing, the cloud mass. In this manner, Aaron shall come toward the Kudash with a young bullock, a son of the herd, and a ram for an ascending offering. He shall be clothed in a Kudash white linen tunic, and the white linen breeches shall exist over his flesh. And he shall be girded with a white linen girdle, and he shall be bound up with a white linen turban. These are the Kudash, set apart holy garments. And he shall wash his flesh in water and be clothed with them. There's just more of that ritualistic cleansing we talk about, like the idea of being, the baptismals. And make sure that, you when you cleanse yourself, see that you're doing it as a priest for Yahuwah, just daily. Like before I go live with you guys, I make sure to go shower. I'm coming before the congregation. I want to be cleansed. And he shall wash his flesh in water and be clothed with them. And from the congregation of the sons of Yasharel, he shall take 2 kids of she-goats for a sin offering, and 1 ram for an ascending offering. I think it's go time with Azazel. Here we go. And Aaron shall bring near the young bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself, and so make a covering atonement for himself, and afterwards for his house. And he shall take the 2 hairy goats, which I love how Pamela translates hairy goats. It's actually a very, very, very good translation, which we'll be talking about tonight. And shall take the 2 hairy goats and shall stand them to the face of Yahuwah the ever-living at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Aaron shall gift upon the 2 hairy goats a lot pebble, as if goats aren't hairy already, right? It just, you'll see what I mean. The 2 hairy goats, a lot pebble, 1 lot pebble for Yahuwah the ever-living, and 1 lot pebble for Azazel. Or let me see if I can pronounce this in the Paleo. Azazel. And Aaron shall bring near the hairy goat which ascends, upon whom is the lot pebble for Yahuwah the ever-living, and shall fashion him for a sin offering. But the hairy goat which ascends, upon whom is the lot pebble for Azazel, he shall stand alive to the face of Yahuwah the ever-living, to make a covering over him, to send him away unto Azazel in the wilderness. And Aaron shall bring near the young bullock for the sin offering, which is for himself and on behalf of his house, and shall slaughter the young bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself, and shall take a full fire pan of burning coals of fire from over the altar, from before the face of Yahuwah the ever-living, and shall fill both fists with sweet incense, beaten small, and shall bring it from the house to the veil, and shall gift the incense upon the fire to the face of Yahuwah the ever-living, that the cloud of incense may conceal the covering of redemption which is upon the revealed precepts, and he shall not die. And he shall take from the blood of the young bullock and shall sprinkle with his finger. Oh, look, hold on here. I didn't change my picture back. There we go. That's a little bit better. I was really small for you guys there for a minute. Where was I? And he shall, let me start on the top here. And he shall take from the blood of the young bullock and shall sprinkle with his finger over the face of the covering of redemption eastward and to the face of the covering. He shall sprinkle 7 strokes of the anvil from the blood on his finger. And he shall slaughter the hairy goat of the sin offering for the people, and shall bring his blood toward from the house to the veil, and shall fashion his blood as he fashioned for the blood of the young bullock, and shall sprinkle him over the covering of redemption and to the face of the covering of redemption. And he shall make a covering atonement over the Kudash from their uncleanness of the sons of Yasharel for all their sins, missteps, calamity. And in this manner he shall fashion for the tent of meeting which has settled down to dwell among them in the midst of their uncleanness. And no man shall exist in the tent of meeting in the Kadash until he come out and has made a covering on his behalf, and the behalf of his house, and on behalf of all the congregation of Yasharel. And he shall go forth toward the altar, which is to the face of Yahweh the ever-living, and shall make a covering atonement over him, and shall take from the blood of the young bullock and of the blood of the hairy goat, and shall gift it upon the horns of the altar in a circuit round about. And when he has finished from covering over the Kudash and the tent of meeting and the altar, then he shall bring near the living hairy goat. And Aaron shall lay his 2 hands upon the head of the living hairy goat, and shall confess over him all the perversity, depraved actions, guilt contracted by sinning of the sons of Yasharel, and all their defection and rebellion and all their sinning, and shall gift them unto the head of the hairy goat, and shall send him away by the hand of an opportune man into the wilderness. And the hairy goat shall lift up upon himself all the perversity, depraved actions, guilt contracted by sinning toward a land deserted, devoid of herbage. And he shall send away the hairy goat into the wilderness. Man, there's so much here that unfortunately, I'm just not going to be able to cover all this time. This is some good stuff. And Aaron shall come toward the tent of meeting, and shall put off the white linen garments which he clothed himself with upon going toward the Kudash, and shall rest them there. And he shall wash his flesh in water in the Kudash standing place, and shall be clothed in his garments, and shall come forth and fashion his ascending offering and the ascending offering of the people, and so make a covering atonement on his behalf and on the behalf of the people. And the best, choicest fat of the sin offering he shall offer as incense upon the altar. And he who sends away the hairy goat unto Azazel, or Azazel, shall wash his garments and wash his flesh in water, and afterward come toward the encampment. And the young bullock for the sin offering, and the hairy goat for a sin offering, whose blood was brought in to make a covering upon the Kudash, shall be carried forth toward outside of the encampment, and shall burn in fire their skins and the flesh and their excrement. And he who burned them, he shall wash his garments and wash his flesh, and afterwards in this manner shall he come toward the encampment. The festival explained. And it shall exist to you a statute of long duration in the 7th Kadash. On the 10th of the Kadash, you shall afflict your nefash, or your nefashath, which of course is the plural of nefash, your soul, your souls. And you shall not fashion in him any work of service, whether native born or a stranger that sojourns in your midst. For upon this day he shall make a covering atonement over you, to purify you from all your sins to the face of Yahweh the ever-living, to make you clean. It shall be to you a solemn Sabbath, and you shall afflict your souls, your nefashath, by statute for a time of long duration. This is talking about the Day of Atonement, in case you're curious. Yom Kippur. And the priest with whom he shall anoint, and with whom he shall inaugurate his hand to minister as priest after his father, shall be clothed in the Kudash white garments. And he shall make covering from the most set apart in the tent of meeting and the altar. He shall make a covering over the priest, and over the people of the congregation he shall make a covering. And this shall exist unto you a statute for a time of long duration, to make a covering over the sons of Yasharel from all their sins once a year. And he will fashion like that which Yahweh the ever-living commanded unto Meshaha. I feel like I need to pause here, because if I don't, I'm going to forget this later. I spent so much time over the last few weeks, really 2 or 3, maybe 4 weeks ago, talking about how Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, is the most holiest day of the year. I mean, and why is that? Because we have 2 types of sins. You have conscious sin and unconscious sin. And as I have pointed out, and I put the challenge out there, can you find to me in the Torah where conscious sin, where there's a sacrifice for it? And what I mean by that is a sacrifice that if I go out and I commit a conscious sin, so Yah forbid, murder, adultery, okay, dishonoring my parents, things like that. We'll start with the 10 Commandments, all right? Stealing, so on and so forth. It could be slander. I commit any of these sins knowingly. Where's the sacrifice for it? All right. Now, there's unconscious sins, things that I have sinned and I didn't know I sinned, and it comes to me later that I sinned. There are a lot of sacrifices that I can go and make. And this is one of the things I took you through in the New Testament, where Paul talks about it, the writer of Hebrews talks about it. He's like you're not in, now that you have come into this consciousness, right? Now that you are knowledgeable of it, stop sinning, stop doing it, right? Yeah. So people, some people will freak out like, wait a second, you're saying there's no forgiveness? No, there is forgiveness for your sins. It's the Day of Atonement. This is when the high priest goes in, he puts the blood on the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. And this is why I say with Yahushua HaMashiach, who is our high priest, that nothing has really changed. That's not entirely true, because things have obviously changed, but the law itself on which it stands has not changed. All throughout Yasharel's history, I had to go point at my high priest and go, he went in on the Day of Atonement, he put the blood on the mercy seat, all sin is forgiven. All sin. I can now re-enter the camp, and I put my faith on my high priest to do that. And this is what we say when we put our faith on Yahushua HaMashiach, or you can say Jesus Christ if you want, that we say that he did it all, right? This is what the Puritans would say. He did it all. You did nothing. Well, in a way, that's true. He is my high priest. It is his blood that now I am forgiven. All right. This is what we're talking about, the Day of Atonement, the holiest day of the year. And of course, we'll get into the Azazel goat as well. All right, let's keep reading chapter 17. And I brought that up then because I'm not going to be commenting on that later. And Yahuwah, the ever-living, set words in order toward Al-Mashahat to declare, set words in order toward Al-Aaron and toward his sons and toward all the sons of Yasharel, and declare toward them, this is the purpose plan which Yahuwah, the ever-living, has established, saying, any man from the house of Yasharel that slays an ox, or perhaps a lamb, or perhaps a goat, inside the encampment, or perhaps slays from outside the encampment, and that does not bring him toward the entrance of the tent of meeting, to bring near to gift unto Yahuwah the ever-living, to the face of the Mashakan dwelling place of Yahuwah the ever-living, blood shall be reckoned to that man. He has poured out blood, and that man shall be cut off from the midst of his people, for the purpose and intent that the sons of Yasharel may bring their sacrifices which they slaughter over the face of the plain into Yahuwah the ever-living, toward the door of the tent of meeting, toward the priest, and slaughter shalom offerings unto Yahuwah the ever-living, with them that the priest shall sprinkle the blood upon the altar of Yahuwah the ever-living at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and shall burn as incense the best, choicest fat for a sweet scent unto Yahuwah, that they no longer continue to slaughter their sacrifices unto Sha'ayar, when they commit fornication with Akaram, or the word there's like Archon. So think of a satyr, or a goat demon. That's literally kind of what's being implied there, or one of the lesser Allahim, one of the lesser gods, the Archons. All right. So he's saying, I don't want you offering to any of them, to demons or to gods. You're not to offer to any of them. I'll be talking about that more tonight. This shall exist as statutes for a time of long duration for them throughout the circuit of the ages. And you shall declare toward them, any man from the house of Yasharel and any portion from the strangers who settle down to dwell in your midst that causes to ascend an ascending offering, or perhaps a sacrifice, and does not bring him toward the entrance of the tent of meeting to fashion him unto Yahuwah the ever-living, that man shall be cut off from his people. Sounds pretty serious. And any man from the house of Yasharel, or from among the strangers that sojourn in your midst, that consumes any blood, and then I will set my face against that nephash consuming the blood, and will cut them off from the midst of their people. For the nephash of the flesh is in the blood. The life is in the blood. I have given it to you upon the altar to make a covering over your souls, your nefashath. For it is the blood that makes a covering atonement for the nephash. It is for this reason that I have declared unto the sons of Yasharel that no nephash, no soul from among you shall consume blood, and no stranger that sojourns in your midst shall consume blood. Now, I want you to see if you see a theme developing here in how he's talking about. Yahuwah is talking about one thing, and then the next, and then the next, and how does this all connect? The Torah for hunters, our next section. And any man of the sons of Yasharel, or from part of the strangers that sojourn in your midst, which catch, hunt, or lay snares for any living creature, or perhaps a winged fowl that he will eat, then he shall pour out his blood and cover over him with dry earth. For it is the nephash of all flesh. His blood is upon his nephash. Therefore, I have declared unto the sons of Yah. I just saw that in a new way just now. For it is the nephash of all flesh, but then get this, his blood is upon his nephash. That's really interesting. His blood is upon his soul. They're showing that someone's soul is connected with their blood. Think about that with blood transfusions. Therefore, I have declared unto the sons of Yasharel, the blood of any flesh you shall not consume, for the nephash of all flesh is in his blood. All who consume it shall be cut off. That's pretty serious. Do not drink blood, all right? No vampirism here. You will be cut off eternally. There will be no vampires in New Jerusalem. In any nephash that consumes a carcass or that which is torn by wild beast, so no roadkill here, whether native born or whether a stranger, then he shall wash his garments and wash in water and be clean until Arab, then he shall be clean. So if it's a clean animal and it has been killed by another animal, and I guess you eat that, I guess you're just unclean. Don't do it. And I think that really fits in with what I described a couple weeks ago with, like buzzards and vultures, how they're, of course, unclean animals. And we don't want to be associated with people who are like vultures or buzzards, who rob and steal and murder, that kind of stuff. They're always looking to what they can take from other people, right? That's what a carnivore does in that sense. And so you're kind of almost participating with that kind of animal in that action. All right, the command to abandon pagan customs. And Yahuwah, the ever living, set forth words in order toward Al-Mashahah to declare, set forth words in order toward the sons of Yasharel, and declare toward them, I am Yahuwah your Allahayah. Like all the workings of the Aratz Matzarim where you dwell, in her you shall not fashion. And like the workings of the Canaanites, but the Canuan, so where I brought you there, you shall not fashion. So you're coming out of Egypt, all those things you learn in Egypt, you're not to do that. We're going into Canaan. It's actually going to be worse than Canaan. You're going to see things there that is like makes Egypt look like preschool. Definitely don't do that. And neither shall you walk in their practices, laws, or ordinances. That's kind of an interesting way to put it. I'll be talking about that tonight. You shall not walk in the practices, but the laws or the ordinances of the Canaanites and their gods. They too have laws and ordinances. My judgments you shall fashion, and my ordinances you shall guard and walk in them. I am Yahuwah your Allahayah, and you shall guard them. My statutes and my judgments, which if he fashion them, then the man shall live in them. I am Yahuwah. Commandment regarding marriage and sexual relationships. And you thought you were going to get out of a discussion of sex tonight. I'm sorry, this is the Bible. It's not going to happen. No man of you shall draw near toward any relation by blood. His flesh shall not approach her uncovered nakedness. The nakedness of your father or the nakedness of your mother, she shall not remove her coverings. She is your mother. She shall not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's covenant woman, she shall not remove her covering. She is your father's nakedness. The nakedness of your sister, whether the daughter of your father or perhaps the daughter of your mother, birthed from within the family or perhaps birthed from outside the family, she shall not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your son's daughter or perhaps your daughter's daughter, you shall not uncover her nakedness, for they are your nakedness. The nakedness of the daughter of your father's covenant woman born to your father, she is your sister. You shall not uncover her nakedness. The nakedness of your father's sister you shall not uncover. She is your father's relation by blood. The nakedness of your mother's sister you shall not uncover. She is your mother's relation by blood. The nakedness of your father's brother you shall not uncover to draw near. She is your uncle's wife. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your kalath. Let me just see what this is real quick. This is usually translated as daughter-in-law, but could also mean bride or a maiden betrothed or one deeply longed for. Though from the Paleo, it appears as if the relationship between man and woman is completed. All right. So typical translations would say, you should not uncover the nakedness of your daughter-in-law. The nakedness of your brother's covenant woman you shall not uncover or reveal. She is your brother's nakedness. The nakedness of a woman and her daughter you shall not uncover. Whether it is her son's daughter or her daughter's daughter, you shall not take her to yourself to uncover her nakedness. Behold, she is her blood relation. This is a wicked deed. Neither shall you take to yourself a woman toward her sister to press or distress her, to be her rival, or to uncover her nakedness in her life. And toward a woman unclean, polluted, you shall not approach to uncover her nakedness. And toward your fellow's covenant woman, you shall not gift the seed of copulation to make yourself unclean with her. And you shall not gift from your seed to pass over unto Malak. And neither shall you pierce through, wound, or profane the name of your Alahaya. I am Yahuwah. You shall not lie down with a male as lying down with a woman. It is an abomination. You shall not give copulation with any beast to pollute yourself, to make yourself unclean in her, and neither shall a woman stand to the face of a beast to lie with. It is pollution. You shall not contaminate yourselves in any of these, for in all these the nations defile themselves, which I cast out from your face. And Ha'aratz was polluted, or the earth was polluted. And I struck against the perversity, guilt, depraved actions upon her, and Ha'aratz vomited out her inhabitants. But you shall guard my statutes and my judgments, and shall not fashion from any of these abominations, neither the native born nor the stranger that sojourns in your midst. For all the abominations which the owl have fashioned, the men of the land which were to your face, and so polluted the earth, the Ha'aratz. For all who fashion these abominations, then those souls, the Nathashawath, that fashion these shall be cut off from the midst of their people. And you will guard my observances, for without fashioning from these statutes, abominations will work before you. See that you do not pollute yourselves in them. I am Yahuwah Abahayam. And this concludes the reading for the night. All right, well, let's dig into it. Why do I have pictures of meat, of various colors of red meat? Well, one of the things I have heard from some who are, want to keep the Torah. I actually went out to a restaurant one time, and they were getting really upset that we had rare meat, and they're like, "That's blood. That you're breaking the commands." And we tried to explain to them that actually that's not blood. Okay, when you guys go to a steak restaurant and you order a meat, you do not, or a hamburger, you do not need to make it extra well done. All right, you don't have to. I actually was speaking with a woman who she's older than me, and she says that she's been keeping the Torah her entire life, grew up in a Torah family, and she worked in a steakhouse for years. And people all the time, they would be like, yeah, I don't want any. She'd be like, how well or rare do you want your meat cooked? And they're like, I don't want any blood in it. And she would say, well, there is no blood in it. We don't have any blood in our meat here. And they'd be like, what? All right. So just take you guys through this real quick, just so we're all clear. There is no blood in meat. And I put down some notes here so I could be scientific with you guys. Blood is removed during the slaughtering process. All right. They cut the neck, it spills out. Now, I guess if you want to be technical, you can never completely remove DNA, right? But that's not what it's talking about here. It's talking about actually drinking or participating in the blood of the animal, right? Which nobody is doing. It does not happen in any restaurant known to, well, that I know of in the Western Hemisphere. I won't speak for other places. Blood is removed during the slaughtering process, and afterwards, very little blood remains in the muscle tissue itself. All right, and whether you cook it all the way or whatever, that's not going to change anything. The red liquid is not blood. It is water mixed with a protein called myoglobin. Now, myoglobin is a protein found in the muscle cells of animals. It's in ours as well because we're an animal. It functions as an oxygen storage unit, providing oxygen to the working muscles. Now, I have another illustration here showing the oxygen level and meat color. And so you could see where there's a high amount of what they would call oxymyoglobin. It is over here, it's very pink. And a low amount it gets darker. And then where it's none, you see it over there, it gets even darker still. And so you can almost see like maybe it's, am I right in saying maybe it's a little more unhealthy to have less of it? It doesn't look good to me. So myoglobin is what separates white meat from red meat. It's kind of interesting. The more myoglobin cells, the redder the meat is. This is why you're not going to find it in, say, chicken or duck. You're going to find it in cattle. Most mammals have a high amount of myoglobin and are called red meat. Animals with a low level are considered white meat. These are animals like poultry or seafood. So I just wanted to point that out because we read about, some people might freak out and be like, oh no, I can't eat any meat that has blood in it. No, please, you can have it rare, medium rare, however you like it. There is nothing in the Torah that says you can't have rare meat. Just want to settle that. That's something I'm going to stick by unless if someone can give me really good evidence for the contrary. All right, let's start talking about Azazel. Looks like I spelled that wrong. I put Azal. I got the paleo right though. Azal, the goat. And it says, and the hairy goat shall lift up upon himself all the perversity, depraved actions, and guilt contracted by sinning toward a land deserted, devoid of herbage, and he shall send away the hairy goat into the wilderness. Isn't that interesting, this idea? And there's a lot of there's probably going to be different opinions out there on Azazel. There are going to be some people who watch this video who may disagree with my conclusions. And what I'm going to do tonight is, rather than maybe getting too theological with you, I think, as I often do, I just want to read through scripture, things that I have found on Azazel. I'm going to read it to you, and then you can come to your own conclusions on this. Now, we see in the Gospel of Matthew, and this is the Hebrew Gospel of Matthew, it says, now, when the Satan goes out of a man, he walks by difficult places, seeking rest, and he does not find it. And I think this is, of course, Yahushua HaMashiach speaking. I think it is the perfect description of the Azazel goat. It goes out into the wilderness, and of course, you put on this goats all the perversity, depraved actions, guilt contracted by sinning, right? Because this is the Day of Atonement. This is a very holy day. This is the day when the worst sins, the worst perversities can be forgiven. Like we're talking the thief on the cross. All right. So, and then here we see something kind of similar. Revelation. I read this a lot to the point that sounds like a broken record, but I'm gonna go over it really quickly. And after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babel, the great is fallen and has become the habitation of devils and the hold of every foul ruach in a cage of every unclean and hateful bird, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And of course, we get the famous verse here in verse 4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues. It's kind of interesting. So I'm making the connection here with the Satan goes out into the wilderness, the Azazel goat goes out in the wilderness, and we see that when Babel falls, it becomes the home of every kind of habitation of devils, unclean ruach, right? Satan creatures, unclean animals, hateful birds. All right. And I did a whole paper, which I'm going to be brushing up here soon, again, touching up on, called Wastelands of the Seraphim, where I show the esoteric nature of dragons and how dragons actually exist in the wastelands. There's places, you kind of don't want to go. I'm not talking about, taking a hike out in the woods here. All right. So let's get it right into Enoch. And this is where we read of Azazel. This is where he first shows face. This is First Enoch chapter 8. And this is right after contextually the Watchers come down on Mount Hermon, and they make a pact with each other that's, they're all in this together. And I don't think they broke that pact. I think they stuck with it. And Azazel was among them. And it says, and Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much unrighteousness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways. Now, I don't have time to go through all this tonight. I did do a presentation like 3 years ago at this point on how connecting how Azazel was actually on the earth before the Watchers came down, and he had actually been teaching women the beautification process before the Watchers came down. And in fact, the very fact that he gave makeup and the beautifying products to women is what actually attracted the Watchers to come down. I personally believe, suspect that one of the reasons that in the Middle East, ancient cultures, it was such a big deal to actually cover a woman, to make sure her hair was covered, was because of the consciousness that was still in that culture of what the Watchers did. And they wanted to protect the women. And, it wasn't just showing them off to other humans, it was showing them off to angels, angelic beings. And so I want you to pay attention here that Azazel, now I'm not going to take you through all the list of what the different Watchers did. They all had different contributions, but Azazel specifically, he introduced, aside from the beautification products like jewelry and so on, and makeup, we see swords, knives, shields, breastplates, the metals of the earth that were used to war. Now, what's interesting is that in Bereshit 3, we already see an angel coming down to guard Eden with a flaming sword. So he's actually taking these mysteries from heaven. They had swords in heaven. He's taking the mysteries of heaven, he's bringing them down to earth. Swords in themselves are not evil, because we know they have them in heaven, but he is introducing them through, very awful means. Skipping ahead to chapter 9, the following chapter, we read this. And then Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel looked down. So here we have 4 of the kind of the holiest angels. They looked down from heaven and saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and all lawlessness being brought upon the earth. I actually love this scene. And they said one to another, the earth made without inhabitant cries the voice of their crying up to the gates of heaven. And now to you, the holy ones of heaven, the souls of men make their suit, saying, bring out cause before El Elyon. And they said to the Adonai of the ages, Adonai ha-Adonim, Elohai ha-Elohim, King of kings, and Elohim of the ages, the throne of thy glory standeth unto all the generations of the ages. And thy name holy and glorious and blessed to all the ages. Thou hast made all things, and power over all things hast thou, and things are naked and open in thy sight, and thou seest all things, and nothing can hide itself from thee. Basically, what's happening here, according to my estimation, is that these angels, these 4, are actually a little frustrated. They're going before El Elyon. I mean, I think they're doing it humbly, but they're like, look, you know all things, you know everything. Everything is naked before you, and you're not keeping us in the loop here, because we're going and seeing these things are happening, and these cries are sending to heaven, and like they're basically saying, look, we're seeing that these cries are sending to heaven. We know you already know about this. Like, why don't we know about this? And then they say, thou seest what Azazel hath done. So notice, of the 200 watchers, he gets top billing. Like, they're like Azazel, they know who this guy is. And they're like, did you see what Azazel is doing? Who hath taught all in righteousness on earth and revealed the eternal secrets which were preserved in heaven. Wow, the eternal secrets which men were striving to learn. All right. Enoch chapter 10, jumping ahead, next chapter. And again, Yahuwah said to Raphael, bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him therein, and place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face that he may not see light. Now, this is a kind of a problematic scene for anyone who believes that Azazel is still around after this, because it appears like he's done for. But I have read this so many times in different parts in Enoch. I think that this is his sentence, but it's not actually exacted at that moment. Like this is going to happen to him, but it's not today. Now, some people might be like, blasphemy, but you'll see what I mean. And on the day of the great judgment, he shall be cast into the fire. Now, again, it makes it out like he's buried in the earth until the day of the judgment. I actually think, this is what I think is happening. I think when he's thrown into the abyss for the 1,000 years, this is the serpent of old. You'll see what I mean in a moment. This is what he's talking about. The opening the desert, which is in Dudael. This is when he's thrown into the abyss. And then after that, he's released for a time. And then on the day of the great judgment, he shall be cast into the fire. You see how that works? So there's a couple of missing pieces of information here, which you can put together in other passages. And heal the earth, which the angels have corrupted, and proclaim the healing of the earth, and they may heal the plague, and that all the children of men may not perish through all the secret things that the watchers have disclosed and have taught their sons. And the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught by Azazel. To him ascribe all sin. There you go. There's your Azazel goat right there. Isn't that interesting? Like, of all the other watchers, all the things they did, this dude has corrupted the entire earth through his teachings. To him, Azazel, ascribe all sin. First Enoch chapter 13. So jumping 3 chapters. And Enoch went and said, Azazel, thou shalt have no peace. A severe sentence has gone forth against thee to put thee in bonds. And thou shalt not. And so I don't know. Were there angels standing by with the chains right then? I think he's like giving a sentence like, this is what is going to happen to you. I could be wrong. But I think it was thousands of years later when this happened that he was thrown into the abyss. And thou shalt not have toleration or request granted to thee because of the unrighteousness which thou hast taught, and because of all the works of unrighteousness and sin which thou hast shown to men. All right, now this is kind of an interesting part. I was actually asked this question before I went live. So I actually was given the people in Discord a little talk on the 5 Satans. This is really crazy because people talk about Satan generically, like there's just one Satan. We know that there's many Satans, but specifically in the book of Enoch, there's 5 big baddies, 5 big Satans. And one of them, as I will show you, is Azazel. So let's read this. Chapter 69. And after this judgment, they shall terrify and make them to tremble, because they have shown this to those who dwell on the earth. And behold, the name of those angels, and these are their names. The first of them is Shemiyaza or Shamjaza. The second, Arstikpa, and the third, Armin. The fourth, Kakabel. The fifth, Teril. The sixth, Rumiel. The seventh, Daniel. Not the prophet Daniel. The 8th, Kaol. The 9th, Barakel. The 10th, Azazel. The 11th, Armers. The 12th, Batariel. The 13th, Basasael. The the 14th Ananael, the 15th Turiel, and the 16th Semapiziel, the 17th Yatarel, the 18th Tumael, the 19th Teriel, the 20th Rumiel, and the 21st Azazel. Do you notice how there's two Azazels there? So something to think about. There's two Azazels in the book of Enoch. For whatever reason, if Yahuwah personally named them, he liked the name Azazel. I guess they both turned. You have to wonder if there's a good Azazel. And these are the chiefs of their angels and their names, and their chief ones over hundreds and over 50s and over tens. All right, so now we're going to talk about, this is talking about specifically the five right here. The name of the first of the five is Yukun. That is the one who led astray all the sons of Elohim and brought them down to earth and led them astray through the daughters of men. Now, there are two ways you can interpret this right here. The sons of Elohim, this is probably referring to Genesis 6. And the sons of Elohim or the sons of Elohim, these would be the watchers. All right. Notice it doesn't say the angels, right? And I believe, personally, that we are the sons of Elohim. And this is what we are aiming for, to be sons of Elohim, sons of God again, right? To enter righteousness. And we could call Yahusha, as it says in Hebrews, a brother, because he is the only begotten son. We too can be sons, right? And I won't take you through the book of the Nazarene right now, where Yahusha says that we are the bastard sons of Elohim. All right. But the idea is that the sons of Elohim, the sons of Elohim, are a different class than the angels. So you have the cherubim, the seraphim, things like that. And it appears that this could be saying that the watchers who came down were actually sons of Elohim. Something to think about. Or it could be stating that these are this was us in pre-existence in our initial rebellion. It could be saying that too. All right, let's keep moving on. And the second was named Kisab El, and you can see the word El in there for Elohim. He imparted to the holy sons of Elohim evil counsel and led them astray so that they defiled their bodies with the daughters of men. So we hear all the time about the rebellion from Satan, right? Well, now we have two Satans who were co-conspiring. One is who he actually led the charge, and another, he was in there. He's kind of like QURA. He's kind of in the crowd giving, he's probably slandering Yahuwah. He's saying, and saying, or did Elohim really say, right? And he's leading people through evil counsel to make bad decisions. The third Satan is Gadriel. And this is, I'm going to show you, is actually Azazel. Same, he has multiple names. Gadriel is Azazel. And we were also discussing, by the way, the word Gad here. It closely resembles God. And this is one of the reasons why, if this gets me in trouble, it gets me in trouble. This is one of the reasons I think we should all consider being very specific in our prayers, and not being generic, not just praying to the Lord God. All right. Because the Lord could be Baal. God could be Gad, Real, Azazel. Think about that. And the third was named Gadriel. He it is who showed the children of men all the blows of death. We talked about like the angel of death or whatever. And he led astray Chahwaha. There it is. He led astray Eve. This is the dude this was in the serpent in the garden. And he led astray Eve, Chahwaha, and showed the weapons of death to the sons of men. Wait, what? Well, that's what Azazel did, right? And he showed the weapons of death to the sons of men, the shield and the coat of mail and the sword for battle. So we know Gadriel is Azazel. And all the weapons of death to the children of men. And from his hand they have proceeded against those who dwell on the earth for that day and forevermore. So Gadriel is like, I have become death, the destroyer of worlds, right? All the destruction that happens. Yahusha said he was a murderer from the beginning, right? It makes sense. Like the guy knew how to kill, right? He is the one that brings death and destruction. He comes to rob and steal. This is who we're talking about. And the fourth was named Penemuel. He taught the children of men the bitter and the sweet, and he taught them all the secrets of their wisdom. And so this guy was a bit of a theologian, a philosopher, like the probably instituted the mystery schools. This would be the earthly wisdom we talked about, not the Ruach HaKodesh. And he instructed mankind in writing with ink and paper. And thereby many sinned from eternity to eternity and unto this day. For men were not created for such a purpose, to give confirmation to their good faith with pen and ink. For men were created exactly like the angels, to have to the intent that they should continue pure and righteous, and death, which destroys everything, could not have taken hold of them. But through this, their knowledge, they are perishing, and through their power, it is consuming me. Now, just to point out here, because this has been used to criticize, well, wait a second, like the book of Enoch, like Enoch wrote it down. So yes, Enoch actually did start inscribing down. We have the Bible. And of course, I'm a writer. I write. Is writing evil? No, it is not evil. But think about all the horrible propaganda and doctrination that has happened through writing. Think about the idol that is 66 canon, the Bible, that people hold as the Freemasons hold it as a furniture piece. All right. And then you have all these, the Protestants, sola scriptura, scripture alone, right? And there's a lot to be said about, getting your theology from chapter and verse, because I'm all about that. But you see how the Bible itself, the written Bible, is actually an idol for a lot of people. I think this is what it's talking about here. And the evils that have come from the scribes who have actually changed scripture. That's an unthinkable thought, for Protestant thinking, that it could ever be changed. But they've changed some portions of scripture. This is the evil that's being talked about here. I actually threw this quote in from the Book of Britain, for those of you who are part of that study. And this is a king of Britain, if I remember the context, and he's criticizing the writing down of texts. He's actually against it, because he thinks that the religion, true religion, should be passed orally from master to student. And this is what he said: become paladins among the people, making the words of these writings the cause you serve. The inspiration is divine, but the medium is human. In the past, the pure light of truth was concealed from the multitude of the people in riddles and a fog of jargon. Parables satisfied the people's understanding. Religion degenerated because in its higher aspects, it was not understood by the mass of the people, and there was a fear of casting pearls before swine, hence the mysteries and the need for ceremonial images and symbols. So you know how the world is run through symbols. A lot of us, we've been through this. We talked about Freemasonry earlier this week. I had a video on that. And he's talking about how religion went into the mystery schools because they were tired of these higher concepts being thrown, the pearls being thrown before swine. And so they kept them secret for those reasons. And he goes on to say, people more readily worship representations of Allah Hayam because they cannot comprehend him and shirk the effort of trying to. Allah Hayam cannot be represented by things of this world to the understanding of the aristocratic soul. And he's even talking about words themselves. I actually think this is one, we were having a discussion before we went live about how Allah Hayam is the name of the Father, but that's actually a name of many. There's many Allah Hayam. In the modern Hebrew, we would say Elohim, right? And I don't know if he has a name or not, but I don't think that it can be expressed. I think that if he has a name, it either can't be pronounced by us in our tongues, it can't be written down. There's something to it, but it's really all about his character, right? At the end of the day, is what is the character of the Father? I think that's what's most important. All right, and so just quickly, let's go over the fifth Satan here. We'll move on. We're running out already an hour into this. And the fifth was named Cassiad. This is he who showed the children of men all the wicked smitings of Ruachoth, that would be spirits and demons. So he's basically, this is like when you talk about satanic religions, or, this is demonic. Well, you can thank this Satan for that. And get this, and the smitings of the embryo in the womb, that it may pass away. He taught abortion. And the smitings of the soul, the bites of the serpent, and the smitings which befall through the noontime heat, the son of the serpent named Tabayet. What in the world is that? Who is the son of the serpent named Tabayet? I'm not going to be discussing tonight, but wow. All right. You can see a lot more. I'm going to just move on. Get back to Azazel. All right. Chapter 54, we read this. And I looked and turned to another part of the earth and saw there a deep well with burning fire. And they brought the kings and the mighty and began to cast them into this deep valley. And there mine eyes saw how they made these their instruments, iron chains of immeasurable weight. And I asked the angel of Shalom who went with me, saying, for whom are these chains being prepared? And he said unto me, these are being prepared for the host of Azazel, so that they may take them and cast them into the abyss of complete condemnation, and they shall cover their jaws with rough stones, as Yehuwah of Ruachoth commanded. And Michael and Gabriel and Raphael and Phanuel shall take hold of them on the great day and cast them on that day into the burning furnace, that Yehuwah of Ruachoth may take vengeance on them for their unrighteousness and becoming subject to Satan and leading astray those who dwell on the earth. So that's a point in history I don't believe we've come to yet, where they are. I mean, I don't think that's talking about the abyss. I think that's talking about the lake of fire, if I had to guess. All right, so now let's turn to the apocalypse of Abraham. We're still talking about Azazel. And I'll be reading from a long portion here. This is just a phenomenal book. I did a Bible study on this about 2 years ago now with Zen Garcia. I really enjoyed it. And the angel said to me, Abraham. And I said, here am I. And he said, slaughter all these animals and divide them into halves, the one against the other, but do not sever the birds. And give these to the men whom I will show you standing by you, for these are the altar upon the mountain, to offer a sacrifice to the eternal. But the turtle dove and the pigeon give to me, for I will ascend upon the wings of the bird, so that you may be able to see in heaven and upon earth and in the sea and in the abyss and in the underworld and in the Garden of Eden and in its rivers and in the fullness of the whole world and its circle, you shall gaze into them all. That's pretty self-explanatory, I think. He's about to be taken up through the several firmaments of the heaven. He's able to look down, and he's going to see all the way down into Sheol. He's going to see in the depths of the ocean. He's going to get to see the Garden of Eden. He's going to look down and see the stars in the firmament. So this is like the final frontier, guys. Like he's like in the true sense of the word of Star Trek, he's about to go there. And I did everything according to the command of the angel. Gave the angels who had come to us the divided animals, but the angel Jael took the birds, and I waited until the evening sacrifice. And there flew an unclean bird down upon the carcasses. Isn't that actually, we just read about the carcasses tonight. And I drove it away. And so think about, remember now what the vultures are that go down on the carcasses? They're murderers. I just covered that a couple of weeks ago. They're the murderers. And who was a murderer from the beginning? And the unclean bird spoke to me and said, Abraham, what are you doing upon these holy heights, where no man eats or drinks, nor is there upon them the food of man, but these heavenly beings consume everything with fire and will burn you up. Forsake the man who is with you and flee. For if you ascend into the heights, they will make an end of you. He's trying to, put doubt into him, right? And it came to pass when I saw the bird speak, I said to the angel, what is this, my Adonai? And he said, this is unrighteousness. This is Azazel. And he said to it, disgrace upon you, Azazel. So you can just see by the time of Abraham, Azazel is still flying around. Disgrace upon you, Azazel, for Abraham's lot is in heaven, but yours is upon the earth. Because remember, he can no longer look up to heaven anymore. Because you have chosen and loved this for the dwelling place of your uncleanness. Therefore, the eternal mighty, isn't that interesting? So you know how you sell your soul to Satan to get a slice of the pie? You're trying because you want a piece of this earth. You don't want the kingdom of heaven, right? This is the same thing with Esau and Cain. We saw. So it's interesting. It says here that he loved this dwelling place more. It's kind of interesting. So when you sell your soul to Satan to get a slice of the pie, it's because you actually have his heart, because you want this world. You want this to be your kingdom rather than the kingdom of heaven. I just now saw that. Therefore, the eternal mighty Yahweh made you to be a dweller upon the earth, and through you every spirit of lies, and through you wrath and trials for the generations of unrighteous men, For Allah Hayam, the Eternal Mighty One, has not permitted that the bodies of the righteous should be in your hand, in order that thereby the life of the righteous and the destruction of the unclean may be assured. Hear this, my friend, and be gone with shame from me, for it has not been given to you to play the tempter in regard to all the righteous. Depart from this man. You cannot lead him astray. He is an enemy to you and to those who follow you and love what you desire. For behold, the vesture which is in heaven was formerly yours, has been set aside for him, and the mortality which was his has been transferred to you. That's interesting. There's the Azazel goat right there. The mortality which was his has been transferred to you. Really interesting. And the angel said to me, know that from henceforth the Eternal One has chosen you. Be of good courage and use this authority so far as I bid you against him who slanders the truth. Should I not be able to put him to shame who has scattered over the earth the secrets of heaven? There it is again. And has rebelled against the Mighty One. Say to him, become the burning coal of the furnace of the earth. Go, Azazel, into the inaccessible parts of the earth, just like we saw with the Azazel goat going into the wilderness. For your heritage is to be over those who are with you, the ones brought forth with the stars and clouds and with the men whose portions you are, even those who exist on account of your being. So it's saying that there are men that only exist because of Azazel. All right, it's talking about serpent seed right there. The men on this earth who actually descend are descendants of Azazel on this earth. And justification shall be your enemy. Now depart from me by your perdition. And I uttered the words that the angel taught me. And then the angel said to me, answer him not. I love this. Answer him not, for Allah has given him power over those who answer him. Now I want you to stop and think about this. He's saying, if Hasatan comes and asks you a question, whether it's Azazel or any of the five Satans or any fallen entity, do not answer them. Do not answer the question, because the moment you answer them, you put yourself under their authority in the answering of the question. It's the same thing, guys, with trolls online. I fall for that trap every so often. They'll answer me they'll ask me a question. They act like they're really caring, like they really want to get an answer. And I kind of like, I'm not really sure. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. And I answer the question. I'm like, I'm so sorry I answered that question, because now I've just put myself under their authority of mockery or whatever. And it's the same thing, guys, with like police officers, things like that. They will come up and they will ask you a question, and how you answer the question is very important, because you are actually putting yourself under their authority at that point. It's the same thing with your Miranda rights, right? There's actually a legal system to this. And Hasatan actually plays into this legal system. You don't have to, you have your Miranda rights with Satan. All right. And the angel spoke to me again, saying, however much he speak to you, answer him not, in order that he may have no free access to you. Isn't that it? It's almost like you answer him. It's almost like opening the door. Come on into my body, to my life. Just come on in. Have free access. It's all yours, right? You don't do it, because the Eternal One has given him weight and will in this respect. It's all part of the legal system. And I did that which was commanded me by the angel. And no matter how much he spoke to me, I answered him nothing whatsoever. So I keep imagining the scene. Abraham's right there. He's doing his thing. And just Azazel is just, he's just trying to talk to him and try to ask him questions, trying to tempt him. And he's trolling him. All right. Azazel is trolling Abraham right now, just like the internet trolls. All right. Skipping ahead. All right. And see, where are we in this? So I'm skipping ahead from 15 to 28. And the Eternal Mighty One said to me, Abraham, and I said, here am I. And he said to me, consider from above the stars which are beneath you. So now he has ascended up through the heavens. He's actually looking at the stars below his feet. And number them for me and make known to me their number. And I said, how can I? For I am but a man of the dust of the earth. And he said to me, as the number of the stars and their power, so will I make your seed a nation and a people set apart for me as my own inheritance, as distinct from that of Azazel. And yet I include Azazel in my house. That's kind of interesting. I'm going to, for lack of time, I'm going to skip down even further here. Let's see. So I've talked about this a lot because I want to talk about Azazel being numbered in his house. I've talked about this a lot in the past about this moving picture that Abraham looks into. It's actually like a TV screen or a movie screen. From what I can find, it is the first. I don't want to call it sci-fi effect because it's not. I mean, we have computers, TVs in our house. You're watching me through a computer screen. This is the oldest I can find in any kind of literature where there is actually a movie camera, and he's actually looking at this in heaven. Really fascinating that this technology of movies, of computers, came from heaven. So this is what we read. And I said, we're on verse 33. Oh Lord, mighty and eternal, who are the people in this picture on this side and that? And he said to me, those are, so there's basically, I'm just describing it for you. There is Azazel, and then there's people on the left and the right. Those who are on the left side are all those born before your day and afterwards, some destined for judgment and restoration, and others for vengeance and cutting off at the end of the age. But those on the right side of the picture, they are people who have been set apart for me and whom I have ordained to be born of your line and called my people, even some of those who derive from Azazel. All right. So this is straight up serpent seed territory. He's saying that there's going to be some from the seed of the serpent that should be tares. They're actually going to become wheat. They're going to be they're going to be counted as among Yah's people. Going to be called his people. But then look at what it says right on top of that. He says that there are this set apart on one side, and that's what we want to be. And it doesn't matter what your genealogies are. If you come from the seed of Azazel, you can still be counted among the righteous. Cain had that choice. Esau had that choice. They all had that choice. But look right above this. So the people on the other side are those destined for judgment and restoration. Well, that's interesting because I thought the people on the set apart righteous side were the ones being restored. So are you telling me that there are people on the other side who are not set apart who will still be part of the restoration? That appears to be what it's talking about. Kind of interesting. And reading on, now look again in the picture and see who it is who seduced Eve, or Chawaha, and what it is, the fruit of the tree, and you will know what it is to be, and how it shall be with your seed among the people at the end of the days of the age, and all that you cannot understand I will make known to you, for you are well-pleasing in my sight, and I will tell you of those things which are kept in my heart. And I looked into the picture, and my eyes ran to the side of the Garden of Eden, and I saw there a man of imposing height and mighty in stature, incomparable in aspect, and he was embracing a woman who likewise approximated in the aspect of his size and stature. So I think it's describing him as giants. And of course, Noah was a giant as well. I think he was anywhere from like a 15 to a 30 footer. He would have been bigger than Goliath and bigger than Og. And they were standing under a tree of the Garden of Eden, and the fruit of this tree was like a bunch of grapes of the vine. And standing behind the tree was one who had the aspect of a serpent, having hands and feet like those of a man, and wings on its shoulders, 6 pair of wings, so that there were 6 wings on the right, 6 on the left. And as I continued looking, I saw the man and the woman eating the fruit from the tree. And I said, who are these who are embracing? Who is the one between them? And who is behind the tree? And what is the fruit that they are eating? And he said, this is the counsel of the world. This one is Adam. And this one who is their desire upon the earth is Eve, or Chawaha. But he who is between them represents ungodliness and their beginnings on the way to perdition, even Azazel. So there's your connection right there. Azazel goes back to he is who we generically call Ha-Satan, in conclusion. All right. We have a picture here of a satyr. In the Paleo Hebrew, he would be called a Seirim, or a satyr. He's a goat demon. Of course, this is Pan, right? The Pan man with a dryad. In this picture, I think the woman there is actually a tree spirit. And what do we have happening here? We have a man coming from civilization into these ruinous areas to learn from these ancient spirits. That's how it works, right? The unclean spirits are in the ruins. And it says this in Yeshayahu 34:14, Isaiah 34, and a desert beast shall meet with the island beast, and a goat demon shall call to his neighbor, surely there Lilith shall repose, and she shall find a resting place for herself. Now, I'm not going to be going a lot on Lilith tonight. In a couple days, I'm giving a whole presentation on Lilith. Please check that out. So if I'm pronouncing this right, I'm actually pulling this from Wikipedia. The Serim. So according to the book of Enoch, Azazel is the chief of the hairy ones. Remember earlier when I talked about the hairy goat? So it's interesting that Azazel is the chief of the hairy ones. And these hairy ones, they're like goat-like entities, demonic entities. This is where we get Baphomet from. The Serim are goat demons who haunted the desert and to whom most primitive Semitic tribes offered sacrifices. And this is why Yahweh made such a big deal about, I do not want you. You better come to the tabernacle, make a sacrifice. You better not be making sacrifices to these. You're going into the Canaanite territory. Don't be making sacrifices to these hairy ones, these goat demons, satyrs, the Pan Man. All right. So in Hebrew, it means they're demons. Seir was the ordinary Hebrew word for he-goats. And it is not always clear what the word's original meaning might have been, but in early Jewish thought, possibly in 3rd Baruch as well, along with translations of the Hebrew Bible, such as the Vulgate and Peshitta, these Serim were understood as demons. They are considered to be the lowest of all created beings. That's really interesting. I will be talking about that a little bit more. They're frequently compared with the Shittim of Hebrew tradition, along with the satyrs of Greek mythology, fauns of Roman mythology, and the jinn of Arabian cultures, like the genie in the lamp. I just went over the Isaiah passage. No, this is a different one. Well, that's good. It talks about goat demons in that they will dance with the howling creatures. Okay. In the Latin Vulgate translation of the Old Testament, these Seir is translated as Pelosus, which also means hairy. Jerome, the translator of the Vulgate, equated these figures with the satyrs. Okay, they are mentioned once in Leviticus 17:7. Okay, we actually went through that tonight. Probably a recalling of Assyrian demons in the shape of goats. All right, so what do we got here? Oh, the book of creation. Now, this is kind of interesting. Again, I'll be talking about Lilith in a couple of nights, and we will be mentioning her here. But I want you to see, let's just skip for lack of time to verse 13 here of chapter 5 of the book of creation. I did a study on this last December, if you remember. And it said, one day near the edge of the garden, this is a Dedam, this would be the Adam character, fell asleep in the heat of the day. Now he enters the garden. He is now the caretaker of paradise. He falls asleep. This is a pretty badass scene. And he awoke to find himself surrounded by the sons of Bothas. Well, who are the sons of Bothas? Not true men, but yoslings, kinsfolk to the beasts of the forest. These are actually what I believe are Sasquatch creatures. And these yoslings, they enter and they actually attack him. Before they could take his strength and wisdom, he lost himself among them, slaying some in his rage and might before the rest ran away. So he's protecting the garden, as he should be doing. They have invaded, and he has repelled their attacks. When it was done, he sat himself down beneath a great tree, for he was wounded, and blood gushed out from his side and gathered thickly beside him. He became faint, falling into a deep sleep. And while he slept, a wondrous thing happened. The Wraith came and lay beside him. So this is a pre-existent spiritual creature. This is the Eve character, Cha'wa. So she has fallen in love with him. And she takes blood from his wound upon herself, so it congealed upon her. Thus the spirit being became clothed with flesh, born of congealing blood, and being sundered from his side, from his rib. She rose a mortal woman. This is the book of creation's account of how Eve came to be. It's a really cool story, this idea that he was actually fighting off these Sasquatch, these hairy goat creatures. Seems to be a connection there. Now, one more reference from the same chapter of Book of Creation. Dedam, the first father, married Letha. All right, that's Lilith, straight up, right there. There's a tradition right there. By the way, all these yoslings, these wild men, all through Mesopotamian culture. We see it with the Epic of Gilgamesh and others. I think that they were a force to be reckoned with. I think that they were recognized back then. Anyways, Dedam, the first father, married Letha, and they had a son called Herthu. Dedam then married Mava. There's your Eve right there. who had a daughter, not by him. And this was Guinevere, the cuckoo child, So this is where it parts ways with the Genesis account. Instead of Cain, it's a daughter. But the idea of a cuckoo child, right? What does a cuckoo do? It goes to another nest and it lays on them, not its own, right? So the idea is that Guinevere is not, she's a cuckoo child because she is not the daughter of the Dom character. She was fathered by Abrimenid of Gwarthon, son of Naptinigal, whom we call Luid the Dark Father. Well, long story short, about the land of the children of Alahayam, this would be the land around paradise, was the wasteland where Yoslings. So this is kind of where Cain wandered in the land of Nod, called the children of Zumat, which means they who inherit death. Right? What did Azazel do? Right? Inheriting death. Well, among these was Namtinigal, the wily hunter. That's a character trait of Nimrod. The wily hunter, and Esau as well, was the most wise and cunning, like the serpent. He alone was unafraid of the children of Alahayam, and he alone dared enter the garden land. All right, so kind of interesting. Now, this comes from a kind of a weird blend of Egyptian, British mixing, but it's interesting to see these biblical stories in there, and it all. I'm putting it all together with Azazel. All right. For lack of time, I'll skip this quote in Matthew. This is about the demons entering the pigs, and the idea is that the belief that demons could enter these Azazel goats as well. These actual spiritual entities. Was it a Hasatan actually entering the goat? All right. Yeah. So here we see. Okay, so really quickly here, this comes from the writings of Abraham. Moreover, Nimrod was instructed in all the secrets of the evil combination. I was trying to get at this in the interview that I had with Michael and Dan this last week on Leaving Freemasonry about the code he was given. And the evil combination by his father Cain, for Cain had not perished in the flood. Say what? I've been through this a few times before. Cain, of course, because he was the seed of the serpent, he was a type of Nephilim that when he was killed, when he died, his spirit still wandered, and so the flood did not take him out. And some people will be like, "That's heresy." Well, do you believe in the Nephilim? Because if you believe in the Nephilim were killed in the flood, but they became the disembodied demons that still wander the earth today. So the idea is that the demons coming from these giants are still teaching mankind today. And Cain literally, it means the spirit of Cain is still alive. And of course, the spirit of Cain is Freemasonry. The spirit of Cain is still leading mankind to this day. And he instructed Nimrod. Well, Ham became Pan. He became, according to Travels of Noah into Europe, I did a whole presentation on that. So all these illustrations here, the satyr, which is an Azazel goat, is actually a representation of often Ham. For lack of time, I'm not going to go through that. Sorry. All right. Here's a scene from, I'm not going to read this either. Man, I'm running out of time. This scene here, the two goats in Bezor Nicodemon, or the Gospel of Nicodemus, you see the parting of ways with Yahushua HaMashiach and Hasatan in Sheol, where, it was put upon him. Just building the case. Okay, let's move on from Azazel. I think I covered enough of that tonight. I think I gave like a whole hour presentation on Azazel. All right, the Torah against unauthorized sacrifice. Now, this had my interest, and I do not necessarily have an answer for you. I'm putting this out there as a question. Now, I'd like you guys to maybe answer this. And it says that anyone who slays from outside the encampment and that does not bring him toward the entrance of the tent of meeting to bring near to the gift unto Yahweh, he has poured out blood, and that man shall be cut off from the midst of his people. Sounds pretty serious, right? Now, in the same context is where we're talking about the goat demons, the Sha'ayar, and the Acharayam, which is the archons, the lesser Elohim. So it seems to be the context here is you're going to land of Canaan, you better not be, those spirits are going to be wandering around. You better not be sacrificing to them. All right. I put that out there as a possible explanation, but the idea here is that it says in the law that you are not to sacrifice outside of the tabernacle. Well, then look at what's happening here. We have the building of altars in the Old Testament. In Yahushua, that would be Joshua 22:10. It says, when they came to the region near the Yarden that lies in the land of Canaan, the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh built there an altar by the Yarden, an altar of great size. In Judges 6:24, it says, then Gideon built an altar there to Yahuwah and called it Yahuwah is Shalom. Judges chapter 13. So Manoah took the kid with the grain offering. Of course, the kid would be a goat, and offered it on the rock to Yahuwah, to him who works wonders. When the flame went up toward heaven from the altar, the angel of Yahuwah ascended in the flame of the altar, while Manoah and his wife looked on, and they fell on their faces to the ground. I will remind you that the tabernacle did exist at this time. It was not at the tabernacle. Judges 21:4 says, on the next day, the people got up early and built an altar there and offered burnt offerings and sacrifices of well-being. So then we jump forward to 1 Samuel, where the tabernacle still exists. And Shaul built an altar to Yahuwah. It was the first altar that he built to Yahuwah. I don't think that's a negative term. That I'd have to look at the context. 2 Samuel 24:18 says, that day Gad came to David and said to him, go up and erect an altar to Yahuwah on the threshing floor of Arunah, the Jebusite. And in 1 Kings 18:30, then Eliyahu, or Elijah in English, said to all the people, come closer to me. And all the people came closer to him. First, he repaired the altar of Yahuwah that had been thrown down. So he's actually repairing an old altar, and this is not where the temple is. All right, so I'm throwing those out there to show that, sometimes we read these commands, and maybe it's not saying how we're reading it. Maybe the context is he's like, he wanted you to go do the sacrifice at the tabernacle or the temple to ensure that you were doing it to him and not to other gods. Because it's like, if you're doing it other places, and what Elohim are you sacrificing to? And yet you see prophets here. You see David, you see Eliyahu, you see Gideon, you see good dudes going and building altars and putting sacrifices on them. Food for thought. I'd like to hear your words. Moving on. Judgment versus statutes and ordinances. I think you guys are going to find this interesting. So reading again from chapter 18 really quickly, it says, and Yahuwah, the ever-living, set forth words in order toward Al-Mashahah to declare, set forth words in order toward the sons of Yashar and declare toward them, I am Yahuwah, your Alahayah. Like all the workings of the earth, or of the Arats in Matzarim in Egypt, where you dwell in her, you shall not fashion. And like the workings of the Canaanites, where I brought you there, you shall not fashion, and neither shall you walk in their practices, laws, ordinances. Remember when I comment about how it's interesting that the Canaanites have laws and ordinances? And my judgments you shall fashion, and my ordinances you shall guard and walk in them. I am Yahuwah, your Allahayam, and you shall guard them, my statutes and my judgments, which if you fashion them, then the man shall live in them. I am Yahuwah. So what I want to do is ask the question, what is a judgment versus a statute or ordinance? Are we looking at two different things? Now, there was so much to cover tonight. I could do a whole Bible study just on this. I'm afraid I don't have a lot. This maybe will be something I do in the future. Maybe future in the Torah. We'll look more at this. But let's contrast this. Do not do the walk in the do not walk in the ordinances of Egypt from which you have come, or in the ordinances of Canaan where you're going. Of course, it's going to be way worse in Canaan, way more like darkly satanic pagan in Canaan than it ever really was in Egypt. I mean, Egypt was so much more, I guess, spiritually civilized, if you want to put it that way. A lot less baby killing going on and other like orgy acts. But here's what he wants: walk in ordinances and judgment of Yahuwah. And again, here in Devarim, Deuteronomy 6:1-2, he says, now this is the commandment, the statutes, and the judgments, which Yahuwah your Elohim has commanded me to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you're going. So there's a separation between commandments, statutes, and judgments. So here is my thought on this. This is my thesis, and I could be wrong, but this is the thesis I'm putting forward. And as I investigate this, I might come up with different ideas. My understanding based on my studies, is that judgments might be understood to be logical or natural law, which mankind collectively understands without the need for divine commandment. So this is something that atheists would love to point out. They're like, we don't need, because they're very much against religion, right? What they're saying is we're against statutes and ordinances. If you ask like an atheist, you go to a philosophy class, you might start out saying that I was a philosophy major, and you ask your philosophy teacher, like, well, if you don't believe in God, then how do you know what is right or wrong? And they'll tell you, well, mankind collectively decides on that, right? They can understand that murder is wrong and these kind of things, and mankind does. And abortion, they know better, like they do. They know that it is wrong, and it plays into their psyche later on when they make those decisions. So judgments is something that is collectively understood without the need for a divine commandment. All right. So don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal. These are all things that are just kindergarten morality, stand in line, right? Wait your turn, these kind of things. Be respectful. In this way, many nations might keep the natural law of judgment. So when nations become especially perverse and they are doing away with natural laws we see here in the West, it's judgment time, right? This is divine judgment, because now this isn't even statutes and ordinances. This is, you are going against natural law. Judgment is coming on you. So examples of judgment would be idols, murder. I mean, idols is like Yahweh is against it for all nations, because he's like, you guys should know better. This goes against natural law. All right. So idols, murder, stealing, adultery, also not caring for widows, orphans, and the poor. Those are all, of course, the heart of Yahweh, but that falls under natural law. Like if you're not even caring for widows, orphans, and the poor, if you don't have a heart for that, you're not even falling under just what it is to be human at this point. All right. I speak to myself when I say you. I hope you understand that. All right. But let's look at statutes or ordinances. They are a type of command or judgment, though not all commands are statutes and ordinances. All right. So commands are judgments, but they're also statutes and ordinances, right? Kind of like both the hen and the rooster are chickens, right? Same idea. So statutes and ordinances are specific commands given by a God and Elohim to the people in the covenant with them. So in this case, given to Yasharel, because they are decrees which Yahweh, the Elohim of Yasharel, has made as part of his covenant. Even if they are not fully understood, and we're trying to understand them all, they must be walked out in worship and service of him. So Yahweh gives special statutes and ordinances which must be carried out. An example, okay? Thou shalt not kindle a fire on the Sabbath. I think we saw that in Exodus, and we can have a discussion on what that means, but that would be I would put that under a special statute or ordinance, because the common person on this earth isn't going to go, oh, it's Sabbath, I'm not going to kindle fire today. That's a special statute or ordinance. Another would be, as we discussed last week, thou shalt not have sex on Sabbath. That comes from Jubilees. And at the risk of saying that's adding to the Torah, it might be, I don't know. I think it actually lines up with the spirit of the law. I think it actually matches up that you don't want to be unclean on the Sabbath. Just think of it as a spiritual sacrifice. You're giving a spiritual sacrifice from sunrise to sunset. You can do it. And by the way, couples who like people who complain that like they can't have sex on Sabbath, I'm like, seriously? Like, you must not have children. Like, I imagine that couples who are having intercourse on Sabbath are like rolling on a bed of money. They're just wrapping themselves in $100 bills because they don't have any children. Because what parent with children would be like, excuse me, can you guys, mommy and daddy need their private Sabbath time right now. It's like most mommies and daddies can wait till nighttime. They know how to do that. It's not a big deal. All right. So here's a couple of questions. Now, let's take it to the test. Statute, according to my thesis, statutes or judgments question: is eating clean a matter of judgment for the nations? Is that natural law? I actually think it is. It makes sense. But they might be ignorant of it. Is it a matter of judgment for the nations, or is a specific requirement for those who are in a covenant with Yahuwah? I think that's a really good, interesting conversation to have. Eating pig. You're in a covenant with Yahuwah. I am. I don't eat pig. That's disgusting. It just makes me want to vomit. But is that breaking natural law? Something to think about. Another Sabbath question. Sabbath was instituted in the creation week and is written on the 10 Commandments as a command for all humanity. Okay. And yet it is the mark of Yahuwah, noting those who are in a covenant with him in contrast with the mark of the beast. Is it then a statute or a judgment? The Sabbath is a statute or a judgment. That's another question that the class can raise of hands. You guys can answer. I'll let you guys think about. All right. So just quickly going again here. So there's two groups of restoration, those of judgment and those set apart by ordinance, right? So we just looked at the ordinances versus the judgments. So let's look back again at Apocalypse of Abraham, what it says in chapter 33. Some are destined for judgment and restoration. The people on the other side are those who are set apart. Those are those who are obeying the ordinances. Something to think about. Man, there's so much material I want to show you guys. I want to take you guys down on a trip down. I wanted to be your tour guide in Sheol. Just for lack of time, I'm just going to move on. All right. Oh, let's talk about sexual sins. Why not? You shall not contaminate yourselves in any of these, for in all these the nations defile themselves, which I cast out from your face. The earth was polluted, and I struck against the perversity, guilt, depraved actions upon her, and the earth vomited out her inhabitants. So this is when we talk about Yahuwah divorcing people, it's actually, it's talking about how they're divorced from the land, right? Once you're divorced from the land, you can't go back to the land. I am a firm believer in that. I believe that the plot of land that is historical Israel, I believe that is done. It's terms of Yahuwah's covenant plan. This is why I think the hidden wilderness is so important, why paradise is so important. This is what Abraham was truly looking for. But Israel was divorced. They moved on. I believe Judah was divorced. And it's tied in with sexual sins. So clearly, if we want to enter the land, again, I would say the hidden wilderness, which I connect with paradise, then we must abide by Yahuwah's judgments, but also his statutes and ordinances. You see how this all ties in together. Now, Adam and Chawah were driven out of the land over sexual sin. We see that in the Aramaic Targum. It says right here, and he drove out the man from thence whence he had made to dwell in the glory of his Shekinah at the first between the two cherubim, the cherubim. He's actually saying that they're actually putting Adam here in the place of the high priest. The very individual who could approach the mercy seat between the two cherubim, saying that paradise was between the two cherubim guys. They're actually saying that's like the mercy seat. That's pretty crazy. But then we see here, so they were driven out. Why? Well, look at chapter 4, verse 1. And Adam knew Chua, his woman, who had desired the angel. And we know that's Azazel. And she conceived and bare Cain. And she said, I have acquired a man, the angel of Yahuwah. And she added to bear from her husband, Adam, his twin, even Havel. Basically saying, of course, Cain was not Adam's son. So question for the class. I'm asking a lot of questions to you guys. I have a lot of unanswered questions. I was just coming up with these going, man, I don't know. But would Adam and, according to what I've shown you, would Adam and Eve or Chawah have remained in paradise had it not been for sexual sin? Because we see here in Leviticus that it is through sexual sin, it's through adultery, fornication, adultery, that he's vomiting them from the land, right? So they are removed. Adam and Chua are removed over sexual sin. If they had committed another transgression, could they have remained? Maybe we'll never know, but I think that's worth asking. We also see that Ham was driven out of the land over sexual sin. We read tonight the portion, thou shalt not, uncover thy father's nakedness, right? Or you shall not have sex with your mother, for that is your father's nakedness, right? That's what uncovering your father's nakedness is for anyone new to class, new to the course. So let's look really quickly here. It says, and he, Noah, drank of the wine and was drunken. Of course, he's drinking of the wine from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which was wine, the very tree. And he made himself naked in the midst of his tents. And Ham, the father of Canaan, beheld the nakedness of his father, and he showed to his brethren without. And Ham and Japheth took a mantle and bare it upon the shoulders of each, and went backward and covered the nakedness of their father. So what they're actually doing by covering the nakedness of their father, they're going and they don't want to see their mother naked, right? So they're covering their mother, and their faces were turned back, and the nakedness of the father they did not behold. And Noah awoke from his wine and knew by the relation of a dream. I actually think that there was he was kind of paralyzed. I can't think of the word here, guys. I'm sorry, but he was like paralyzed through this, and he kind of like through kind of a vision, he knew that his wife was being raped. I'm sorry, this is such an unpleasant picture, and he knew by the relation of a dream, sleep paralysis. I just thought of it. See, it's hard when I'm live, but sleep paralysis. I think Noah had sleep paralysis. That that Ham used a type of magic to come in there. What had been done to him by Ham, his son, who was inferior in worth on the account that he had not begotten a fourth son. So Noah's like, I have a fourth son. My wife is pregnant, and it's not mine, and it's my son's. So for that reason, he was cast out, right? Kicked out through sexual sin. We see Yashrel's divorce was over sexual sin. It says right here, and I saw when for all the causes whereby backsliding Yashrel committed adultery, I had put her away and given her a bill of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Yehuda feared not, but went and played the harlot also. And this is going to catch up to them eventually. Interesting enough, here in Matthew, Yahusha is telling the Yahudim, the Pharisees, the very reason that they're going to get divorced. It's going to come around to them too. So this passage really quickly here, some Pharisees came to him to test him. They said, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? And of course, we know that the Pharisees were divorcing their women for any reason. It could be like burnt toast and they could divorce them. Haven't you read, he replied, that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what Elohim has joined together, let no one separate. Why then, they asked, did Moshe command that a man give his wife certificate of divorce and send her away? Yahushua replied, Moshe permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard. But it was not this way from the beginning. I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for what? Sexual immorality, and marries another woman, commits adultery. And so he's basically saying, it's a foreshadowing of what's going to happen to Yehuda. They were the ones committing sexual immorality. You see right here, for lack of time, not going to read it. I've read it so many times in the past. Babylon the Great, mother of prostitutes, abominations of the earth. Yehuda became the whore, burns up in the fire. All right. Now, moving on, recall the ordinances of Mitzrayim and Canaan versus Yahuwah, right? So do not walk in the ordinances of Egypt from whence you have come, or the ordinances of Canaan where you're going. Walk in the ordinances and judgments of Yahuwah. Now, why do I have Shira up here? I was thinking about Ashira today. This is the goddess Ashira that they were going into Canaan. Of course, Baal and Moloch would have been the other two. But look at Shira right here. Who here remembers the 80s? And this was a show I used to watch as a child. Shira, of course, was the counterpart to He-Man. And look at how Shira is so close to Ashira. It's the same thing, except for the A's missing, right? Ashira. But then I was thinking about this going, oh my goodness, She-Ra. She is the female Ra, a feminine Ra, the sun god, which would make He-Man Ra, right? Well, to add to the sexuality, because Ashira was a super hypersexualized goddess. Who here remembers Orko, that little red, weird floating wizard demon? And they used to make it in She-Ra where you had to look for him. He was like the original Where's Waldo. And then I would always look for him and go, I found him. And then at the closing credits, they would show you where he was. Well, I was looking him up on Wikipedia today. I thought this was interesting. Orko is a Trollin. It's like straight up troll, just like the spirit of Azazel, a race of beings from Trolla, whatever, a world in another dimension. So he's a spiritual entity, right? Well, Trollans wear red robes and hats and hide their faces beneath hats and scarves. I'm getting this from Wikipedia, I think. Since in Trollan society, get this, showing one's face to each other is considered an intimate act. So that's a great children's entertainment there. All right. Well, so, and I'm sorry for these images, or maybe I'm not, I don't know. Here we see Asherah. These are some surviving idols that have been found in Canaan. They were not completely destroyed. Asherah was believed to be Baal's mother. And I actually think that she is you could see the connection with, Ishtar and, even Venus and so on and so forth. I actually think that Asherah is some people would say that this would be not Cain's wife, I'm sorry, Ham's wife. Could be. I actually think she's a corruption of the Ruach HaKodesh. All right. There's a reason why Yahweh said, don't go study with reverence, not study, but don't have reverence to these other gods. It's because they're corruptions. They're actually the mysteries of heaven have been corrupted. Anyways, Asherah was believed to be Baal's mother. In Hebrew, the word for Asherah, Elat, meaning goddess, is identical etymologically to the Hebrew word for the terebinth tree, or Elah. She appears to be a type of dryad, which I find fascinating because I believe Lilith is a dryad, a tree spirit. I'll be talking more about that this next week. Worshippers practiced sympathetic magic in her groves. Well, one of the ways you could describe sympathetic magic, it does correspond with sex magic, but you could, another word for this is correspondence. Correspondence is influencing something based on its relationship or resemblance to another thing. So a classic example of correspondence, you can think of a voodoo doll, right? You got the doll that represents the person that you put the curse on, and whatever you want to do with the voodoo doll, whether it's stabbing them with pins like you see in like the hokey old shows, or kissing them or whatever you want them to fall in love with you or whatever, but that's correspondence. And so this is how Asherah and Baal were worshipped, in such a way that how you did things that you wanted the sympathetic magic, the correspondence, which the worshipers engage in sex magic in hopes of uniting Baal and Asherah. Their hopes of having intercourse interchangeably with sons and daughters, mothers, so on and so forth. The idea was to get Asherah, the mother of Baal, to have intercourse together, which is sick and disgusting. But this is what they were going into in Canaan. And I wish I had the passage in front of me from Jasher, where it talks about Sodom and Gomorrah, but that's what they were doing too. They were going off on these festivals, and just wives were being swapped, and mothers and daughters didn't matter. And but I believe that was all part of the correspondence as well. So religious prostitution actually came through the worship of Asherah. You could say Semiramis as well, Ishtar, all that kind of stuff. All the different corresponding goddesses. But we see this here. And Yehuda did evil in the sight of Yahweh, and by the sins they committed, they provoked him to jealous anger more than all their fathers had done. They also built for themselves high places, sacred pillars, and Asherah poles on every high hill and under every green tree. There were even male shrine prostitutes in the land. They imitated all the abominations of the nations Yahweh had driven out before Yasharel. And of course, the idea that you would go to these prostitutes is you're engaging in a type of worshipful act, which is trying to get the gods to do the same thing in the heavens, to have intercourse. It's like basically trying to get the sins of the watchers going. So in the book of Acts, we see chapter 15, quick history. We have the Council of Jerusalem, the circumcision issue comes up, and they're trying to figure out how do we bring the new converts in? And this is how they respond. The apostles write a letter, and they say, "Greetings, since we have heard that some who went out from us have troubled you with words, unsettling your souls." So basically, there's some Torah terrorists going around saying that if you're not circumcised, you're not saved. And the big thing is, I say week after week after week that the idea is that no, you need to be circumcised of heart, not of flesh. The Egyptians were circumcised. The Ishmaelites were circumcised. You know who else was circumcised? Nimrod. Nimrod was circumcised, believe it or not. They don't talk about that much. And I have a text to show why, but anyways, they're unsettling your soul, saying you must be circumcised and keep the Torah. Now, the context here I put here is for entry to the faith and salvation, right? So the Judaizers, these are the Pharisees going around saying, unless you cannot enter the faith unless you're circumcised. Well, we know that Yahusha said to bring them in through baptism, to a different type of cleansing. The Pharisees were all concerned about the cup on the outside being clean. Yahusha wanted the cup on the inside to be clean. He wanted circumcised on the inside. Anyways, they say, to whom we gave no such commandment. All right. It's for all you anti-Paulers out there. The apostles are saying, look, we're not telling people that they have to be circumcised for their salvation. It seemed good to us, being assembled with one accord, to send chosen men to you with our beloved Barnabas and Paul, men who have risked their lives for the name of our Adonai Yahushua HaMashiach. We have therefore sent Yehuda and Silas, who will also report the same things by word of mouth. For it seemed good to the Ruach HaKodesh and to us to lay upon you no greater burden than these necessary things. So they're not saying not to do the Torah. They're saying the first thing you do when you come over to the faith, these are things you have to abstain from. Abstain from these things, from things offered to idols, from blood, that's tonight's Torah portion, from things strangled, and from sexual immorality. Well, part of being strangled, by the way, that may seem odd, but they're actually not taking the blood out of that animal. You want it to be a nice cut. You get that blood out. And from sexual immorality. If you keep yourself from these, you will do well. So all of these things that are talked about right here are temple rites. These are all things that worship of other Allahim. They're saying, get out of those temples. Stop having sex with the prostitutes, right? That's what they were doing over here with the sex magic, whatever. I'm trying to find it again. With the correspondence or the sympathetic magic. I forgot to point out here that these trees right here are I thought to represent the dryad of Asherah. But they're saying to stop having sex with temple prostitutes. Stop participating in blood rituals. Keep away from the idols and things from strangled, right? It's all about, like, if you're coming into a covenant relationship with Yahweh or Yahushua HaMashiach, and he is the groom, right? Like, don't be committing adultery with other gods. See why this is so important? It's all about the spiritual adultery just as much as the sexual adultery. Everything mentioned concerns marriage covenants with other deities, hence adultery with Yahweh, right? Just as I said. All right. Now, this is kind of interesting here. This is Hildegard on Baal. She was a German, a medieval mystic, and I've talked about her in past weeks. This is what she actually says about Baal, which I thought was interesting. It plays into this right now because Baal is the son of Asherah. And she says, the evil deceiver who wrongly usurps the chair of the episcopal office. So this is the spirit of Azazel, someone who's coming in with discord and trying to destroy ministries. And this is who Yahweh says he hates these types. So they're playing the part of Satan. They come in, they just try to destroy the ministry without being elected or properly anointed. And the wicked robber who expels his pastor by the whispers of his henchmen, right? So gossip, slander, this is spiritual leprosy, and violently invades his throne, just as Hasatan did, will either undergo grave expiation by their own will or incur serious condemnation by my wrath. This is, of course, Yahweh speaking to her. For they are in the worst possible state of bitterness, imitating the one who wanted the highest honor for himself and was cast out of glorious happiness into death, and following Baal, who has deluded himself that he wrongly named himself a god and was given over to destruction. And that's really interesting too, because Baal was actually, I think it was a descendant of Ham. And in Baal, the original Baal Hammon, his wife, Baal Hammon had an affair with another married woman, the Elhaman's wife left and married Ham. The problem was is that Ham and his wife were actually sister and brother. It was pretty disgusting, but that's a whole nother story. All right. Let's see, for lack of time here, Testament and Shaloma, I'll skip that. I really, man, you guys can see I'm trying to put a lot of extra biblical literature into this tonight. And this is basically the ending to the Testament of Shaloma, how he gave himself over. I'm going to read this real quick. It won't take long. And I, Shaloma, this would be Solomon, son of David, glorified Elohim and adorned the temple of Yahweh with all fair seeming. And I was glad in my spirit in my kingdom, and there was shalom in my days. And I took wives of my own from every land who were numberless. And I marched against the Jebuseans, and there I saw a Jebusean daughter of a man and fell violently in love with her and desired to take her to wife along with my other wives. And I said to their priest, give me Sonmanites or the Shunammite to wife. But the priest of Moloch said to me, remember we said, we saw in Leviticus tonight, do not, offer to Moloch. If thou love this maiden, go in and worship our Elohim. That would be Moloch. The great Elohim, Raphan, and the other Elohim called Moloch. I therefore was in fear of the glory of Allahayam and did not follow to worship. Now remember, one of the 5 Satans that actually introduced child sacrifice. And of course, Moloch is all about that. And I said to them, I will not worship a strange Elohim. What is this purpose that ye compel me to do so much? But they said something, ... by our fathers. And when I answered that I would on no account worship strange Elohim, they told the maiden not to sleep with me. There it is right there. Dry country right there. I told the maiden not to sleep with me until I complied and sacrificed to the Elohim. I then was moved by crafty Eros brought in. So I'm kind of wondering about Eros there, if that's a kind of the worldly wisdom, not the Ruach HaKodesh. Brought and laid by her for me 5 grasshoppers, saying, take these grasshoppers and crush them together in the name of the Elohim Moloch, and then will I sleep with you. And this I actually did. And at once the Ruach of Elohim departed from me. Just tragic here. There goes wisdom right there. And I became weak as well as foolish in my words. And after that, I was obliged by her to build a temple of idols to Baal and to Rapha and to Moloch and to the other idols. This is what Yahweh warned against. Do not do this. Then I, wretch that I am, followed her advice, and the glory of Elohim quite departed from me, and my Ruach was darkened, and I became the sport of idols and demons. Wherefore I wrote out this testament, that ye who get possession of it may pity and attend to the last things, and not to the first, so that ye may find grace forever and ever. Amen. So the whole point of this book is that he's actually using these demons for his will and purpose. He's calling, and they have to attend to him, and they get their they get the revenge. Now the demons are actually making sport of him. And that's why he says, attend to these. Don't attend to the first, trying to control the demons. Tend to the last. Don't give yourself over to the worship of them as I did and have the Ruach HaKodesh leave you. So that's pretty tragic. A couple more things before I end this. So why are we looking at E.T.? And we're looking still at Baal, Asherah, and we talked about the moon child and how that plays into Canaanite thinking. So here we have now remember Asherah, she's kind of in the high places and the mountains, the forest. There's the Asherah poles right in the groves. And she was a type of tree spirit, a dryad, if you will. And what does this remind you of when you see E.T. in the beginning wandering through the mountainous groves? If you think of the high places like Mount Hermon with the Watchers, right? So they have come down in the ship, and of course this one is left behind. Well, here we see this is where Elliot goes in to meet E.T. And you see the waxing moon behind him. And the whole storyline has to do with this, the moon waxing to its full strength, and it's getting more and more powerful to the point where we finally get the moon child. And the moon child is, I'll be showing you, it goes back to the religion of Og and Nimrod. And of course, Aleister Crowley was big on this. And is Elliot the Moonchild? Is ET the Moonchild? Point is that the Moonchild has a kind of connection with the moon through the power of the moon, and a cut through the spiritual curtain, special creation. The way the film ends is when they finally go up to the high place. It's kind of interesting that as ET leaves, he says, I'll be right here. And he touches his forehead. He touches his pineal gland there, lights it up. And he's basically like the Kundalini spirit within him after that. So this here is from the, I'm not going to read this. It's from the Lost Book of King Og. I know, Polly, I know you're watching this right now. I know he hates this book. And it's a very blasphemous book, but it actually describes how Og, it's actually, supposed to be his narrative, and he's worshiping Baal of the moon, and he creates a moon child through correspondence, through these sex magic. He creates a moon child. His wife, who's one of the Riphaim, her name is Lesta, she dies, which is straight up with the Enochian narrative. And long story short, this moon child dies through Nimrod, and they have it out for each other. I want to end this on a happy note tonight. Pagan temples versus Yah temples and the kingdom. We're going to end on Paul, 1 Corinthians chapter 6. It's getting late, guys. This is why I kind of went right through the ET stuff. I had a whole spiel on that. Maybe I'll give a presentation on the Moonchild one night. Know ye not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of Allah Hayam? Be not deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate. Those are all talking about spiritual worship. Physical too, but remember, the letter of law, spirit of the law. Let's just take it to the spirit of the law. Let's take it to the next level. Nor abusers of themselves with mankind, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners shall inherit the kingdom of Allah. And such were some of you, but ye are washed, but ye are sanctified, but ye are justified in the name of Yahusha, or some translations say Adonai, but I actually think it might be Yahusha, or Yahusha, and by the Ruach of our Allah Hayam. Because how the separation there is there's Allah Hayam, the Ruach, Yahusha. And of course, I believe Yahusha is the son of Allah Hayam. Yahuwah is the son of Allah Hayam, just as Yahusha is. It's getting late, guys. Flee fornication, sexual immorality. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body, but he that committeth fornication sins against his own body. What? Know ye not that your body is a temple of the Holy Ghost, of the Ruach HaKodesh? And there it is right there. So remember now the sacrifices, temple. Don't be sacrificing to Azazel, guys. It's getting late. I'm going to be closing on this. Skip of Galatians here. Some great stuff. All right, guys. I'm going to end tonight. Here's the okay bye meme. I tried the GIF. I tried to get this animated for you guys where she waves goodbye. But anyways, this was great. I hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. And I really enjoyed researching all this on Azazel. I think it was kind of fresh tonight from some of the things I've talked about in past weeks. And we'll do this again next week. Like I said, I will be giving a presentation on Mary Magdalene, Miriam of Migdal, and Lilith this week, and showing you how she's actually, Mary Magdalene is kind of like a second Lilith redeemed. And in future weeks, I'll be talking about second Waha as well, second Eve, and how that plays out with another Miriam, the mother of Yahusha. And then I'm going to be bringing on, I think this week for an interview, Shelly from There's No Place Like Home. I think she's coming by Tuck. I think that's the rumor mill, at least, that she'll be coming by. So thank you, everyone, for your support of this channel. Thank you for making this a weekly tradition in your home. Sorry if I stumbled a little bit at the end there. Like I said, it's the end of the week, and it's late, and it's just, yeah. So love you guys. We'll see you guys around this week. If you guys have any questions, if you guys want to talk to me personally, please consider coming by to Discord. Next Friday night, 7 p.m. I do it every week. I meet with you guys. Come on by, talk to us, get to know us. And I'd love to hear from you. We'll do this again. Shabbat shalom. Get your rest.